Hello and welcome. I'm so glad you could be here with me today. And I can't thank you enough for accepting another invitation. My name is Angel, and on today's episode, we're going to get a little deeper than we did last time. Last time we spoke about identifying those masks and understanding how we created them, maybe even how we wear them. And the episode before that, in episode 1, we talked about facing the mirror. But what happens when you take off the mask? Believe it or not, things can get a little scary. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So, why don't we just jump right into it? Welcome to episode 3, an invitation to rebuild yourself. I'd like to call, you know, the part that comes after taking off the mask this big, great void. It's just darkness, and think about it. Have you ever reached a point where you felt lost? Where you thought you had a plan, an idea of how to move forward. And if you're like me, I'll start. This has happened to me so many times. Well, I'll come up with an idea and I'm like, okay, let's just get it started. And I got the first part down, and then I finally got through the first part, but I was so focused on getting the first part right that I kind of forgot to plan the next. And then I'm just like, stuck, frozen. Like, what do I do now? Where am I going? Um, that space where you kind of feel empty and exposed, that's where all the rebuilding happens. And I get it. I've been there more times than I can count. And I think, to sum it up, it's a place where you learn to exist where there's no script to follow. Because when you remove the mask, you're removing yourself from a routine, from something that's familiar, something that you've done your entire life, a program, where you did the same thing every day based on these beliefs that you had. And when you stop, suddenly you remove this mask and you no longer identify with that version of yourself. You're just like, well, what, what the hell do I do? Where do I go? That can be scary, man. That's um that's a scary place to be. Before I understood this, when I was going through my own process, even now I still have moments when I'm going through that process. I get frustrated because I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Interestingly enough, that weird emptiness, as I said, it's the shedding of an old identity. And I remember reading this wonderful quote. Maybe I read it or heard it. I can't recall. Where the person who was speaking or writing, whatever it was, had said that when you can't see the path ahead, it means you're going in the right direction. And it took me a minute to kind of understand what that meant, but it correlates really well with having removed these masks because you're no longer following that routine, right? So, in a way, you shedded those versions of yourself, and now you have, even though it's dark and you can't see, excuse me, and it can be somewhat scary, you have now an opportunity to create a path forward based solely on your conscious decisions, your conscious choices. It's scary but beautiful at the same time. In philosophy, and I told you guys in other episodes, I love philosophy. Lao Tzu, he's a tremendous figure in Chinese philosophy, and he was the author of the Tao Te Ching. Now, it's debated whether his existence is real now, but somebody wrote the book, right? And he's the father of Taoism, Taoism, for anyone who's interested in reading on Taoism. Fantastic um, subject to read on, in terms of philosophy. But anyway, he had said, when I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. And I think that's such a beautiful thing, is shedding these old masks is really an exciting time because for once in your life, if you haven't done it already. It's like children with their imagination. It's like you can be whatever you want to be now. You can do whatever you want to do. You want to create that? Go ahead. There's no one stopping you. There's no one there to tell you you can't do that. And for some of us who grow up in certain households where it was condemned to do something a certain way, that's not there anymore. There's nothing holding you back. And I think we live in fear sometimes of, man, I can't do this because, but we unconsciously don't really know why. It obviously has to do with something that's really deep within a wound, and we hold ourselves back until someone says, What are you waiting for?" And you're like, "Oh, well, I don't know. Can I?" You're like, "Yeah, you can go. Do it." What are you waiting for, bro? And I think that's so freaking cool, man. Um, and I think that's where it starts. So it's just a reminder that once you shed that mask, there is total darkness. And I think it's important to learn to sit with it, be okay with it, and really know that you don't have to figure it all out right now. That's okay. Not knowing where to go is okay. And taking it one day at a time, one step at a time. And that's initially the shock that comes with having taken off those masks, the shock of stepping into this spiritual journey, this physical journey, whatever journey it is you're entering, whatever you wish to call it, whether it's spiritual, whether it's physical, emotional, whatever it is, taking that step into that world oftentimes come with darkness, and that's nothing to be afraid of. um so that's the void, right? We get into the void, it's dark, it sucks. It doesn't feel good at first. Now what? Well, this is where it's important to remember that not every part of you was fake or created by someone else's belief. And I think it's so important that you know that. And what I mean by that is I've always been a deeply caring individual. Like I really care about people, man. I really want to see people just happy. I love seeing people smile, and I know that there was a wound within me that led me to be a people pleaser and go above and beyond more than I should have. But that never stopped feeling good, even though there was a reason for that that led to burnout and sadness down the line, right? It never really caused me harm, to be able to um feel that excitement in helping someone feel that good feeling. I mean, yeah, it sucked being super tired all the time. That was no fun. Um, Being burned out, not being able to be present with my family, with my friends, in my relationship. It was highly affected by that over giving, but it still was such a great feeling to be able to be there for those individuals. That part of me was real. That part was who I am since birth. I just love caring for others. And so there may be parts of you, despite the wounds that you have, that are real. Maybe maybe you have this very fun personality, and you're always laughing at your own jokes, and in some ways that may have been a coping mechanism, or maybe you're just funny all the time. I laugh at my own jokes all the time, and that's me. I used to think it was a coping mechanism too. Well, those parts of you are real. When you start the process of deconstructing, right? Because you remove that mask, so you have to start identifying within that darkness, like what part of me was real, what part of me wasn't real. It's okay to take those pieces with you. Those parts are just as much you as the new ones you're going to create with your new conscious decisions. Don't leave those behind. So it's important to remember that some of those parts weren't fake. Those are who you are, and those are beautiful, and you should take them with you. And if you're not sure, take them along for the ride. And then later on, once you become more consciously aware of what you're doing, and much wiser in your decisions and choices and your identity, you could determine if that's really something you want to continue carrying. At least that's what I did. So, what was truly you versus what was conditioned? Now, conditioned, what's a good example of something that was conditioned? Well, my favorite example, and probably the easiest to understand, is baseball. All right. So, I grew up in a household where everybody was a Yankee fan. So, naturally, if you grow up in a household where someone likes sports, I was a big Yankee fan because my father was a Yankee fan, because my mother was a Yankee fan. And so I remember, r- I don't know if you call it wisdom maybe or just reflection. There was a point where I kind of looked back and I said, why am I? Why do I like baseball? Why am I a Yankee fan, for example? Is that my choice, or was I conditioned? That I grew up in a household where everybody played sports and I became a Yankee fan because Pop was a Yankee fan? And that's an example of questioning that belief. Like, where does that come from? Obviously, I'm still a Yankee fan, but it's not because my pop was, or it's not because everybody in the household was. Uh, I came to an understanding that I like the Yankees because I like the way they carry themselves, the discipline, the etiquette. And now I know that I'm not a Yankee fan because of that. I'm a Yankee fan because I actually like the baseball team. But it's crazy because, how many times have you seen people go to games and they're like, bro, they're fighting each other. And you're like, bro, what are you fighting about? Oh, he said something about my team. And it's not that serious, man. But their identity is so attached to that belief. Maybe their dad was a hardcore Yankee fan or something. And, they love their pop or whatever. And somebody says something about the Yankees. Man, this guy's flipping out. It's like, bro, not good. Not a good thing. So, what is your belief, essentially? Okay. So, it's important to be able to identify what was conditioned and maybe leaving those pieces behind. Because I guarantee you, if you go ask that guy why he hit that other dude, he's probably just gonna say, "Yo, he was talking about my team," but never really explain why. He's just gonna use that as an example. Like, you're responsible for your own actions, man, your own emotions. Why did you hit someone? I can go on and on. Um, so deconstructing the old self. All right, keeping those pieces of you that are real, very important. All right. In the process of that deconstructing, learning is front and center, right? Because you're going to begin to chisel a new identity. And unlearning, hear me out. Unlearning is just as important as learning. Okay? Because you can learn tons of new beautiful things, and take it from me, as I've learned so many things. And even in this journey, I've found myself. And the thing about stepping into that dark void that I forgot to mention a moment ago is that when you take off that mask, your ego is not going to like that. Now, don't get mad at it. Remember, our ego is our knight in shining armor. He is your friend, or she is your friend. She is there to protect you. He is there to protect you. It is a beautiful thing, our ego. Do not consider it an enemy. It's just conditioned to do these things this way because of X, Y, and Z. So you were abused when you were a kid, you were shouted at, you were hit, emotions get suppressed. We talked about it. The ego is always going to try to protect you. So when you introduce something new that's not familiar, the ego is not going to like that. And it's going to try to pull you back, whether consciously or unconsciously. It's going to pull you back into those same routines. Okay. And that's where the unlearning part comes from. It's like, I need to be consciously aware of what I'm doing so I can recognize when I'm falling back into those same patterns. Is it hard at first? Yes, it certainly is. It's so hard, man, because it happens on an unconscious level that you just one day you're just like, oh, shoot, I did it again. I've done it more times than I can count. It's so frustrating. But now I laugh at it when I see myself doing it, right? Because over time, you start recognizing it. Like, oh, here we go. I know it's coming. I see you. You become aware of it, right? And then you start unlearning that. A good example would be I always know, I grew up in a household where my parents were always fighting, unfortunately. Okay. And it wasn't I can't blame either of them, right? They were both triggered, something led to another, and it was madness. What I didn't realize is whenever in my adult life I saw someone arguing or someone getting hostile, my breathing would become very shallow. And whenever I found myself in a position where I had to break something up or even talk, I would become short of breath. I'm like, "Bro, why am I having trouble breathing?" It was kinda scary at the time when I first realized it. I couldn't even say full sentences. It was absolutely amazing becoming aware of that. But it was a response. It was a trigger. It was a trauma response, right? As that fight or flight kicks in, but it was happening unconsciously. And when realized that, whenever I would still find people being aggressive, and given the career that I work in, which I've never told you guys about, maybe down the line I'll tell you what I do for a living, but in the career that I work in, you tend to see that a lot. There's a lot of workplace violence. I'll leave you with that hint of where I may work. There's a lot of workplace violence, and so when people get angry and upset, I always notice my breath. And at first, it was hard to become aware of that every single time and try to take a deep breath without them realizing that I was doing it. It's like, bro, what's wrong with you? They're the ones that are like, yo, you need a doctor. Bro, I was like, yo, move away. Let me get in that bed because I'm about to pass out. It's funny. But eventually it got to the point where I became aware, and before or immediately when something would start happening, it became natural where I just took a deep breath and I didn't have to think about it anymore, right? So it was unlearning that trigger. It was unlearning that unconscious response and learning to world of a difference now. Now I can see people arguing and get hostile, right? And it doesn't even phase me. I just kind of observe. I don't get anxious, nervous. I'm always ready to, defend someone, and wherever justice is needed, do what I can to be of service to those in need. But now it's like heart rate stays the same, breathing's normal, and it's such a wonderful thing. And you may have your instances, your triggers, and things that you can identify. And it's just a matter of being so consciously aware of when it happens. Again, it's not something that happens overnight. It takes time, practice, recognizing those patterns, right? But you unlearn that. And then you can build new practices, right? Which is chiseling that new identity. It's like whenever someone gets nuts, I'm going to take a deep breath. And it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. Um, so, in chiseling that new identity, I wanted to use a quote by Lao Tzu. And he states, "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." Okay. And the thing about discovering now who you are is there's no end goal. And it took me a long time to figure that out. There's no perfect definition of what you're going to be. What there is an opportunity in every present moment to make a choice on which direction you want to take. Okay. Because think of it as you're not really discovering yourself, but creating yourself, right? You're learning and creating a new standard for you. So maybe you're someone who would get really frustrated at stuff or at people. And me, I used to uh funny, I would criticize others. I'm not a judgmental person, but I was. And without knowing I was being judgmental. Imagine like, bro, like here I am thinking I'm a pretty solid person, not judging anybody. Well, I never would openly say it to someone, but in my mind I would. Like, "Huh, look at this guy. If only he knew," and that's the thing about awareness, right? When you put those spiritual and awareness goggles on and you start seeing people where they're at, you're gonna be like, man, look at that guy, and not good. It's natural, right? Because we see things and you may even say like, I'm glad I'm not there. But in that space is an opportunity to be empathetic as well, right? And that's not being judgmental. It's like, I see where he's at. How can I help him in this moment, right? That's a better approach, I think. So you're not discovering yourself, but you're creating. Every moment is an opportunity to create a conscious decision of how you want to step forward. And that's the beautiful thing. But it's one step at a time. There's no rush in this process. Okay. Reconstructing yourself. Where I'm at now, I think took me within this 5 year time frame for me personally, maybe about within the past 2 years when I decided to go across the country and start take my career abroad and do something a little do this, I don't really want to disclose what I do, but I decided to travel across the country and try it there and see what it was like on the other side of the world. And in doing so, I discovered a little bit more about myself. I was alone, and I had nobody, and my ability to survive and all that was that step that I took. And it took me about 2 years to really kind of come into where I'm at now. And there's still so much to undo and so much more to learn. But man, being here now, just taking one day at a time, I'm so glad. And I know you will be too. And just a reminder, it's not going to happen overnight. It's just not. But take it one step at a time. Aim to be 1% better every single day. You know what I mean? That's all it takes because eventually it's going to add up. And 1% better today for a whole month, that's 30% better 30 days from now. Like use simple logic. It makes perfect sense. Um Aside from chiseling your new identity, as we just spoke about, you're creating this new version of yourself. And I think it's important to remember, as I emphasized moments ago, that there's no final version of you. It just doesn't exist. Growth is constant. I mean, I've ran into some people who were very wise, and I would always say I aspire to be at your level of wisdom and understanding. And that's not a bad thing. That's just honoring the journey they took. And we don't know what they went through to get there. We just know they had to go through some stuff, right? Because usually the most calm and loving and wisest people have been through some ish. They have. They really have. And so it's just honoring that. Um, don't look for a final version of yourself. You can imagine, that's always fun. And that's goes into the topic of manifesting, right? Imagining what you could be opens the door to opportunities that you may have not had before, to be this person, to take that path, to do X, Y, or Z, right? And that's a beautiful thing. But when I first started, I had living in my head as much as I did at the time. I expected some finished idea or version to show up before I started. And the truth is that clarity doesn't come until after you take those first steps. It's like, don't wait for something or some idea to show up to start. It's just not going to happen. But if you start moving forward, you take that one single step, which leads to another step, things will start becoming clear. Okay, so I didn't know if I should do this, but I'm gonna try. And what was the this is the cause. I decided to do this, and the effect was this. But now, because of this effect, I know that I should take this step forward because this didn't work out, right? So clarity becomes things become very clear from having made that decision, and that's the fun in it. Of course, in the world and society that we live in of such instant gratification, we may have forgotten along the way that trial and error is what incites growth, and children are very good at it, right? They love trying new things, and they use their imagination and their fun filled minds to just go try stuff. And I guess as an adult, because we're so busy and we work and we have to pay bills, we kind of forgot about that. And that can be tough because it does require a certain level of patience and understanding that today I'm not going to figure this out, but try, take a step. Take a step. I promise it will unfold better than you could have possibly imagined. Don't overthink it. Don't worry about how. Don't worry about the how. That's a big one. Only focus on what you can do today. That's what I tell myself. Even now, just the other day, I said, "All right." I got really deep into the cause and effect in my mind, and I get very pensive and very introspective. And so I was saying, okay, what I do right now, this is the cause. What's the effect of that? And start to realize that the ability to create is really within you, right? It starts with a step and a choice. I'm going to do this and I'm going to stop doing this. I'm not going to go on social media for a month and I'm going to focus on waking up every morning and journaling, you know? And for in 30 days, because of your discipline, now you are journaling more frequently. You're putting your thoughts on paper. Social media is no longer a need. You wake up in the morning, you don't feel the need to pick up your phone. That's an example. So start somewhere and don't worry about how it unfolds. You control the narrative now. No one's those conditioned beliefs and everything are just they're gone. So essentially, it's all about you, and there's a wonderful bit of excitement in that. And I guess I'll leave you with like a question to kind of get the ball rolling here. Um, if you could rebuild yourself, what would you keep? What would you let go? What would you keep, and what would you let go of? Something to think about. And if you would love to share it in the comments, I'd love to hear it. Go ahead, throw it in there. I'd love to hear your insights. Um, I want to thank you again for coming. Just some thoughts on how to start moving forward. And there's always space for more answers. I don't have all the answers, but I have some insight. And I just wanted to kind of share off the top of my head how I kind of went along this journey. And if you have questions, please leave them in the comment. I want that. I want you to ask me questions because I love answering from what I understand with the hopes that it'll help you from that with the hopes that I can learn from you. So don't be shy. Leave a comment, or go to my TikTok at root.analysis where I post like clips of the episodes. Leave a comment there. Tell me about it. Tell me what you think. I'd love to hear from you, man. We're getting deep. We're getting deep in this journey, man. We got to I got you. Trust me. I'm gonna be here with you, okay? I didn't have much of it growing up, but I got you, man. So don't be shy. And as always, I can't thank you enough for joining me once again. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. I'll see you soon.